Top 10 Opportunities by Christian Stewardship Services, introducing the topic of plan giving with donors.
Right, so before we start talking about the various specific gift planning tools, we're going to talk about trying to introduce the topic of plan giving with our donors. And when I do trainings with charities and assist them in just seeking major gifts or plan gifts for their organizations, I start with talking to them about getting in the mindset of donor relations and thinking like a donor and putting yourself, in their shoes. And so that's helpful because then you start thinking about trying to understand why people give. And part of that understanding is thinking like them. You're all potentially donors in this room, and so you think through what motivates you to give. So donors give to make a difference. They give because they believe in something. They give because someone asked them. And people give to people. People do not give to institutions or organizations. They give because someone made the intentional ask for them to consider a gift to the organization. Relationships really matter. Having a relationship with the donor is very important, and getting to know them and learning about their needs, their passions, and interests. They give also because they have the resources to give. They have been blessed. And they give because they are called to give, to be stewardly and give out of a call to their responsibility as being a Christian. The very important aspect for today is they give because they have accumulated assets. And thinking about that really helps the donor development officer or the plan giving officer, knowing that people have accumulated assets, they have to do something with those. They can either give it to their children, or they can give it to others that might be in need, that they know, potentially other family members, and they can also give to charity. And by giving to charity, that helps them with various tax implications that can be eased in their asset portfolio. So giving beyond outright gifts, gift planning is what we call that, is highly attractive to donors for many reasons. For some, it's the only way that they can potentially make a substantial gift to an organization that they really love. They may not have a lot of income over the years, but may have accumulated an asset. And so when it's time for them to pass, they will potentially make a substantial gift to charity. Gift planning allows for a lot of creativity, which you're going to learn today. And they realize the benefits that they can give to charity as well as for their family, because they will have less tax implications, either those being in capital gains or in estate taxes. So the reality here is that there are donors out there that are willing to give, and there are charities like yours that need to ask. And charities can attract more donors by offering different types of gift planning tools that will assist them. So that's getting in the mindset of donors and thinking about the donor. The other aspect is looking for indicators of readiness to ask. And that would be for yourself as well as for the donor. So you yourself have to be prepared. You have to have confidence. You have to exude the body language of understanding and listening and thinking through different ways of potentially considering gifts for donors. You have to have potentially experienced it yourself. Have you made your own gift plan? Have you completed your will? Have you made a bequest to a charity? Have you considered any of the tools we will be talking about today? And even more so, potentially you have experienced the work of one of our stewardship consultants, and you'll be able to tell your donors exactly how the process works. So for the donor, looking for indicators of readiness to ask them is your level of relationship with them. What's their current level of giving? Are they consistent givers? Are they very passionate about your organization? Some of the predictors, and I'm not going to get into all of them today because I only have 10 minutes, but you're looking for things like, are they monthly pre-authorized giving donors? Are they giving on a consistent basis month by month? Do they give a modest level every year? So every year they're making a gift. Their demographics, their age, their marital status. What is their age? Are they aged 40 to 45? Do they have children that are at the age of independence? Are they at the time that, like most of us could be at that age, where they would have to complete or redo their will because of some life change. Are they a widow? Are they a female? Do they have no children? Other life changes that you could look for are things like a spouse passing away, a change of business, a role that's changed, a position that they may have been in that changed in terms of their employment. If you are on LinkedIn, that's a great way to monitor life changes for individuals that go through different position changes. They have accumulated assets, and potentially one of the ways that happens is you yourself become a beneficiary of an estate. And they have started to ask you for more information. And they have expressed to you, I have been really blessed and I would like to do something. And so you're hearing those things from the donor. So if you're starting to experience some of those things and have learned some of those things about your donor, it's time to ask. And how do you do that? You need to come up with the right way that's for you, for your organization, and for the donor. So some ways that you could ask are, would you consider naming our charity in your will? Or are you aware of the tax consequences your estate may entail if you don't consider a visit with a financial planner? It's sounding like this is really important to you. Did you know that there are other ways to help charities like ours beyond cash gifts? There are other ways you can support us beyond just writing a check. So those are some things that you could express. Then there is the element for those that are in the field asking for major gifts and planned gifts is knowledge. It's important for you to get educated. You don't have to know the ins and outs of every type of gift, but knowing and understanding them so that you can think, well, maybe that's the type of gift that that donor would consider. And so today is going to fill you with a lot of information that will enable you to hear some of those things and come back and say, well, that might be the type of gift that CSS can help you put into place for that particular donor, and help you teach them about favorable tax consequences. And you also have the time, need the time and the capacity to do this type of work. And maybe you don't. And so that's why we feel at CSS that we can help you with those things. Maybe you don't have the capacity or the knowledge, and we can assist you in that way. One of the elements is understanding the donation tax credit. And Wayne's going to help explain that.
Okay, Janet said she had 10 minutes to do the introduction, but she didn't give me a time limit for tax credits. So we're going to talk about this for the rest of the morning. So, yeah, one of the things that I sometimes find with people who want to give gifts is they know that there's some tax benefit for doing so, but they're unsure of how that works. And sometimes that's true for people who are making an ask as well. And so I try to spend time educating people on how it works. Sometimes in Canada we get confused with US tax terms, and we hear things like you get a tax deductible gift. Well, that's not true in Canada. One thing to remember is Canadians receive tax credits and not deductions. The difference between a credit and a deduction is that deductions favor high income earners, because as you reduce your total income, you tend to be at higher tax rates. People who have $120,000 of income pay higher tax than people at $50,000, and so a deduction is more valuable to them since their tax rate is higher. A tax credit is simply a percentage that is multiplied by the gift, and that's how much they get back. So everybody, regardless of their income, receives the same size tax credit for an equal size gift. So that's an important thing to realize for Canadians who make gifts. I'm going to talk about credits in Ontario since that's where we are. If you wanted to figure out the other provinces, you could Google that information relatively easily. But the way donations work in Ontario is that there are two credits. There's a federal tax credit and a provincial one. For the first $200 of giving an individual does, they receive a tax credit of about 20.05%. That's a combination of the federal rate of 15 and the provincial of about 6. So, for everything in excess of $200, the person gets higher credit. So there's an incentive to give more than $200 a year. For all of your donors, I'm sure the $200 threshold is not an issue. But for everything in excess of $200, they receive a provincial tax credit of about 10% and a federal one of about 25 or 29%, sorry, which means they get 40% back of every gift that they make. So, just to do a quick run through, on a $10,000 donation in a year for a donor, they would receive about 20% back on the first $200, 40% back on the remaining $9,800, and that brings them up to about $4,000 of tax credits in a year. So that information is in your guide, and there's more information available online or by talking to one of us as stewardship consultants. For people who pay in Ontario higher rates, like 46%, their donation credit will actually be worth slightly more to them, but that's, if you want to know why that is, just talk to me after. It's a little complicated, but I'd be glad to explain that to you. So, yeah, I mean, obviously that applies to our annual gifts, but it can also apply to planned gifts, and you can leverage those benefits much more.
Thanks, Mike. So lastly, we would like to share with you a pilot project that we are proposing to assist any one of you or any one of our partner organizations who may have some challenges with respect to time and capacity and ability to start working on a plan giving program. And it comes from a methodology that a number of organizations have started to use. I've seen it happening at several. And this methodology is based on the fact that research tells us that plan giving donors are that are the most loyal to your organization. And so this pilot project is built around that research. And it means that we would identify a number of prospects within your organization. A plan giving case brochure would be developed along with a letter or a direct mail piece. And a segment of your donor base could potentially be mailed, maybe a $50 to $100 number of donors, depends on the size of the organization that would have to be worked through. And that segment would be mailed with the plan giving brochure piece and a mail piece that encourages plan giving. Following that, there would be a phone follow-up campaign with either the development officer in your organization or one of us staff members of CSS, and we would follow up asking them if they would be interested in further information, if they would be interested in a visit, if they were interested in considering a bequest for the organization. Through that, we would determine whether or not a visit would be the right thing, whether more information would be the right thing, or maybe they would have already completed a bequest. So the idea here is that you start with a small segment that you work through encouraging plan giving through a mail piece and a follow-up piece. And whoever would like to be part of this test pilot project, we'd love to hear from you.
CSS can help. Call 1-800-267-8890 or visit us online at csservices.ca. Thank you.